Hey, it's Alan Berg. Before we get into this episode, I'm starting something called Ask Me Anything. That's right. You submit your questions and they could become an entire episode or something that I answer at the end of an episode. To submit your questions, look for the red button at podcast.alanberg.com. That's right, podcast.alanberg.com. Click on the red button, submit your question, and maybe you'll hear it here on the podcast. Thanks. Weddings around the world, are they the same? Are they different? Let's find out about New Zealand. Welcome to another episode of the Wedding Business Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Berg. I'm a speaker, sales trainer, consultant, author, and I help businesses like yours sell more, profit more, and have a little more fun doing it. Enjoy this episode. Hi, it's Alan Berg. Welcome back to another episode of the Wedding Business Solutions Podcast. I am so happy to have my friend Kevin Townsend on from New Zealand to talk about weddings in New Zealand. Kevin, how you doing?
I'm doing fine in the circumstances.
In the circumstances, okay. Tell me, what are the circumstances?
Well, as you you may or may not know, New Zealand had a very strict lockdown that went on a really long time. They chopped off our part of New Zealand at the top of the North Island and put us into lockdown longer than anyone else. And then that's been followed by essentially a few years of recession. So, what a great time to get into the wedding business.
Right. And then you have a new, is it a prime minister, a president? What is your...
Yeah, Prime Minister. Yeah, got a new government and they're sort of trying to kickstart the economy. I think technically at the moment we're out of recession, but only just. So, yeah, we are definitely seeing the market being quite difficult. People just don't have the money in their pockets that they used to have. And I don't know, they had this saying, survive to 25. And now I'm thinking it should really be survive 25 because it's actually slightly worse so far than 24.
Wow. Well, but you
Mm.
had some still pent-up demand coming out of COVID in the 24,
Yeah,
23, right?
yeah. And I think that has sort of dissipated, and now it's things like mortgage interest rates that are sort of holding us back. Consumer confidence is down slightly.
Right.
It's not going to go on forever, but yeah. So that's why I say in the circumstances, I think we're doing okay.
Yeah, the whole idea of we're in recession, not recession. Those are the economists looking at figures. People feel it in your wallet or you don't feel it in your wallet. That's really what it is. So let's talk about, two parts of this. So let's a little bit more about what's going on with that and then about just weddings in general, forgetting about COVID, the actual wedding itself.
Yeah.
So are you getting inquiries these days?
Yeah, inquiries are going reasonably well. I'm kind of happy with it. We made a decision some time ago to add a bit of friction to our inquiry forms and collect more data from people who are inquiring. And we got rid of a lot of tire kickers and getting better quality inquiries. So I think that it's really hard to know sometimes. Is it good to have a heap of inquiries? I mean, and this is one of the differences with America, is every January is our peak time for delivering weddings, but it's also the peak sales time because of the
Right.
different seasons, right?
Right.
Reverse to the States.
Right.
So that can be quite difficult. So sometimes I think my wife, who handles a lot of the inquiries, would hope that it was not quite so many in January, and then it sort of tails off a bit. So we're happy enough at the moment, I think, and we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, that's an interesting twist on that because being in the Northern Hemisphere, our season, the busiest time in the States for weddings, and people are listening around the world, but here in the States, May through October. Now, it is seasonal in certain places. In Arizona and Florida down south, the summertime is slower. They're busier more, towards the wintertime like you. But for the most part, May through October is the busiest time here. So we have that advantage. If you're listening here when you complain about you're getting inundated in January, you're not doing weddings while you're trying to follow up with all
Yeah,
those inquiries as well. And that's why it's important to have those systems in place regardless of the time of year because you can't not follow up. but you also can't not deliver, right? In your case, you can't not deliver the weddings as well. So tell me about the increasing the form, because typically increasing the number of fields on a form reduces the number of inquiries, which again, you're trying to do that, but you're trying to get rid of the tire kickers. So what did you do on the form? What did you add, take away? What did you do?
Just a few questions, quite basic questions, really.
Mhm.
Just how many guests are you expecting? What approximate date do you want? What kind of wedding are you looking for? And we gave them some, that was just a tick box thing, which has been very useful to understand what they want. It's one of those things. I have to say that part of the reason also is that we have made a decision that we're, for want of a better term, going to be a data-driven business.
Okay.
And we get some incredibly valuable information from those inquiry forms, which enable us to track through what happened, see what worked, see what didn't. Now, I'll give you a little example. I've just been working on producing a whole lot of graphs. We use, for those who don't know it, Looker Studio, which is a Google product, which is free, which is great. And I don't know how they're managing to make it free, but it's just this huge thing. So you get lots and lots of graphs. And so I spend quite a bit of time graphing what people are doing. So one of the questions on the form is, what date, as I've said, what date are you after? What are you looking for? So what we've been able to do is to measure what's the demand for every month during the year, and then go and look of those inquiries, how many did we actually sell? So what months are we performing really well on, and what months are we dropping the ball? So we've just done a big thing where we've adjusted prices and some offerings. We did the same sort of thing with how many people do you want at your wedding? Same thing. We discovered we weren't selling enough big weddings. So we've taken a whole lot of actions to change that around. And when we sort of examined it, we could see why we weren't selling so many. We didn't make enough song and dance about it. On our website, we didn't have a specific page about larger weddings. So we've changed that. We've done some pricing changes. So as well as getting rid of the tire kickers, the people who do come to your website, you get a lot more information out of them, and you can change what you're doing and see whether it's working.
So you're talking about the tire kickers. Is there pricing on your website? Actually, we should step back because we didn't really say what you do. So
Yeah, all
tell
right.
everybody what you do.
Yeah,
Now that we're a
always
few minutes
good.
into this, tell people what you
Yeah,
do because I know that. So
yeah,
go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. So we've got two wedding venues here in Auckland. So one is a very, what I guess, quite a usual wedding venue. It's in a wine region, so vineyard style. It's an historic winery. It doesn't produce any grapes. Well, it produces a few grapes, but we don't do anything with them. So we've got vines and everything which people like, and that's all cool. And then our second venue, Tui Hills, which is that picture that you can see behind me. That's really the New Zealand venue, the New Zealand bush, ferns, palms. It's got the whole New Zealand vibe going on. So that's what we do. But we started out, interestingly, in doing pop-up weddings. That's how we got into the business with a thing called Simply Wed, which was luxury pop-up weddings, and it didn't really work. But we learned a lot of lessons, and now we are offering pop-up weddings and doing way better because we changed how we offered them. So it's been a little bit of a journey.
So describe what you mean by a pop-up wedding.
Well, I guess it's sort of a bit like the word elopement has changed meaning.
Right.
It used to mean you ran away from your parents, went to another, there you go, went to Vegas maybe in your case, or I don't know, somewhere else in New Zealand, and you got married. Now it kind of just means a small wedding, like a
Right.
really small wedding, like
Yeah,
two.
I have some clients with that. So now, you and I met how many years ago now? It's
I think we might have met, although you probably don't remember it at all, at your stand at the 2019 Wedding MBA. So
okay.
that's when you first came on my radar,
Right.
and we we made a big decision to go to the wedding MBA. We'd only just got into the sort of owning a wedding venue. And I've got to say, it transformed everything that we did from then on.
That's great. That's great. And then we worked together during COVID. We did some
Yep,
remote stuff. We worked
yep,
together again, and that's why, the thought you and I have been in contact,
yep,
every once in a while we're messaging anyway. So I love this
yep,
idea. Okay, so um, is there pricing on your website for the venues?
yep, definitely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I
So
mean, it
that
doesn't go, it doesn't
Go
go
ahead.
into everything, but it's enough so people should know
Right.
what
And
they're getting
again, when you
into.
talk about getting rid of the tire kickers, one of the problems that a lot of people have is they don't want to put pricing on their site, but then people reach out who can't afford them. And if we think about this, we live in a world where we can get a price for just about anything online these days. So the lack of transparency, I've stopped saying it's a generational thing because it's really anybody. You and I who are not digital natives, right? You got the white on top, I got the white on the beard. We're not
Yeah.
digital natives, right? We're used to now, we want to get a price for something, we go online. I mean, way, way, way back before I was in this industry a long time ago when I sold cars, you couldn't get pricing information without showing up at a dealership. Now you go
Mm,
online, you can get all the pricing, you get everything that you need for just about anything. So when there's no pricing, you encourage everybody to reach out, then you get the tire kickers. But you also lose people who can afford you because of the lack of transparency. It's the two
mm,
sides to that. So I think having the pricing on your site certainly helps getting rid of the tire kickers. The additional fields, again, it's up in the air. It's working for you with that. Is it just that? Is it other things that went along with it? Who knows? I
mm.
like leaving some of the questions off for something easy to ask them, but I love the idea of, what type of wedding do you want? So what are the choices when you're saying, because you said they're a tick box, what is it?
Well, what we've done is we've created sort of three levels of weddings. So you have at the top is what we call a classic wedding. So the full, well, we do them for 8 hours here.
Yeah.
So that's ceremony and reception is normal. Then we have at the bottom, we have the pop-up weddings, which are 2.5 hours. You can have as many people as you like come to them. We've done pop-up weddings of 120 people,
Yeah.
but you just have canapes and drinks at the end,
Right.
and then you
Right.
go home or
Go home.
wherever. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So that's the cheapest option. And then in the middle was one that we didn't know whether it was going to work, but it's actually proven to be a lot more popular than we thought, which is what we call a compact wedding. So
Okay.
that's 5 hours long. Now, I'm not sure if that's normal in the States or not.
It's kind of normal, yes.
Yeah, it's really unusual here. It's unusually short. So there you go. There's another difference.
Right.
Um, and we found that that particularly appeals to people who just don't want the party at the end.
So describe this 8 hour because people listening here from the States, and I would say even
Mm,
in Canada and some other places,
yeah.
it's typically the of 5 hours. You might have the ceremony, the cocktails on there. So 5 to 6 hours is typical. You might go into an after party or something, but that's more of a typical thing of 5 to 6 hours. So tell us, give me the timeline for this 8 hours.
Okay. Well, starts off normally at 4 o'clock
Okay.
with the ceremony, and then probably go in for then you have this sort of the quote unquote cocktail hour,
Mhm.
which is never only an hour and it's never only cocktails, but anyway.
Okay.
So that's canapes and champagne or whatever the people want, and that's sort of it's the hugging and the kissing and all of
Right.
that. And that goes on for an hour or so, and then you get often at that point the couple go away for photos or they get photos on the at the venue itself,
Right.
and then in for dinner at about 6, and then speeches and what have you get you through to about 8:30, maybe 9 o'clock, and then it's party time, so that'll go through till midnight. So
So
that's when
the
the
uh,
DJ comes
so the
in.
dinner. So ceremonies, how long?
Well, typically only about 20 minutes to half an hour.
Right.
Um, if it's an Indian ceremony, it'll go for
Right.
an hour or
Sure.
whatever.
Sure.
But yeah, so it's short.
Right.
So there's a
That's
lot of
very common here.
celebrating.
And then the that drinks reception, the cocktails,
Mm.
an hour, 90
Well,
minutes.
well, anywhere from an hour to 2 hours, depending on what they want to
Okay.
do, you
Right. So
know.
that's the extending over here. Now, something that's different around the states, not just different, across oceans and all. I live in New Jersey now. I grew up in New York City. And we have what has been dubbed kind of the yo-yo wedding, because when you go in and you sit down and you have your salad and then you get up and dance. And then you sit down and have
Mm.
your entree and then you get up and dance. And then you sit down and they cut the cake and you have your dessert and then you get up and dance.
Right.
And it's this, and a friend of mine in Chicago has got a wedding band and he offers this dancing between courses as a novelty. And I said, "What do you mean a novelty? That's every wedding in the New York area. It's just like that. It's just the way it is.
Mm.
And other places, you sit down, you get your meal. That's what it is.
Mm.
So so if we're talking about half an hour for the ceremony, maybe 90 minutes, you're 2 hours into that 8 hours. Now you have 6 hours for dinner into this. So you said like 8 o'clock, 8:30. That's when it's just dancing from then until
Yeah,
midnight.
yeah, 8:30, 9 o'clock, yeah, till midnight typically. Although quite often we find that the weddings tend to start winding down at about 10:30, 11, you know.
Right,
It-
right. People are done.
yeah. A lot of people come to weddings, they're all fired up, they're gonna, go till 1 in the morning or whatever they think, and it just takes its toll.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
So is an open bar typical or a cash bar or
Uh,
how do they do that?
well, what's typical here is you have like one of two ways. You either have bar tab,
Right.
so that the couple, pay for the
Put down
drinks.
something, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And then after that, when that runs out, which usually gets topped up, but
Right.
once that runs out, then people have to pay. Or the other thing is a beer and wine and soft drinks package. You don't pay any more, but it's fixed price for each person,
Right.
which
Right.
is very popular, as you'd imagine. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But what's interesting is when I talk to my catering clients, bottles of beer, it costs you more for that bottle of beer than pouring that alcoholic drink. And yet we charge less for the beer and wine than we do for the
Mm,
alcohol when it actually costs more to do that. The
mm.
profit margin on that is
Yeah,
less.
that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So just getting back to the compact wedding, then, so with the 5 hours, you're going to get to about 9 o'clock, and you've basically just finished dinner. You say your goodbyes, and then and everyone leaves.
Okay.
Which we've discovered that particularly Korean and Chinese customers
Mhm.
really like that because it's more unusual for them to have the party.
Okay.
It's more of a
Okay.
Western thing, and you probably wouldn't realize this. I'm sure that in Auckland we have about 10% of the population is Asian, what we would
Okay.
call Asian, as in not
Right.
Indian, but
Right.
from Southeast Asia and
Right.
China
Right.
and there. Yeah,
Right.
so it's an important market, and they're having more weddings than other New Zealanders.
Interesting.
So,
Interesting.
per
How
capita.
far is it from New Zealand to that part of the world?
Oh, I don't know. Singapore's what, about 12 hours or on a plane or whatever. So
Oh,
it's a long
still,
way away.
Singapore's still 12. Yeah.
But Alan, everything's a
Everything.
long way away.
Right. Right. I haven't been to New Zealand yet. I've been to Australia. I haven't been to New Zealand.
Yeah.
I was thinking about popping over when I realized that it was what, a 5 or 6 hour flight to pop
No,
over.
no, it's only three from Sydney. Only three from Sydney, so that's
Okay.
not too bad.
Okay. Not too bad. Not too
No
bad. Next,
excuses now, Alan.
no excuse. Well, next time I get down there, there was a conference I did not go to in Bali last year because it was
Oh,
30
cool.
hours of traveling from
Yeah,
here, and my
yeah.
wife has about a 7 hour flight limit, and you can't take 7 hour flights and get to Bali, so it's
No, no,
not
no.
gonna happen.
Yeah.
So, what's percentage wise, maybe what's the price difference between that middle, that 5, 6 hours versus that 8 hours? How much less are they
Um,
paying?
Honestly, it's not huge. We
Mhm.
halve the venue fee,
Mhm.
which is, typically on, say, a Saturday, it's like 3,000 New Zealand, which is about 2,000 American at the moment, and we
Okay.
halve that. Um, so not actually that different,
Right.
but
Well,
people,
it sounds like it shouldn't be because it's just a time difference. They're still having a
yeah,
full
that's
dinner,
right.
right? They're
Yeah,
still drinking. They're just not
yeah,
staying
yeah,
later. Yeah, I would
yes,
think.
and of course with weddings, people drink half of their allocation in the first hour.
Right.
So it makes hardly any difference to the amount that they drink. doesn't make any difference to the eating. It's really only the fact that they don't have a DJ or a band at the end and they don't dance, where
Yeah.
we hardly have any drinks consumed anyway. So yeah, it works. I think it mostly because it fits in culturally with some people,
Right.
and because there are some people who just don't want to dance.
Right.
They just don't want to get
So
up on the.
so are they not having music or just not having it later?
Well, they might have some music during dinner or what have you. We've had people who've had things like a cellist or
Okay.
whatever,
Okay.
during the meal. But essentially, dinner's finished, and that's
Go
kind
home.
of it. Yeah, yeah,
There's it. You're done. But again, culturally it fits, which makes, which makes sense. You're offering them something. I'm glad to
yeah,
hear that you're not charging a lot less for that
yeah.
because, you know, it, people talk about sales. Really what it comes down to is profitability. And going back to the data, and that's a thing that a lot of people don't have their head around is a lot of this data that you're talking about. And when you look at supply and demand and say, okay, whatever our busiest month is, which might be January or it might be, February, whatever it is for you, there's, each of your venues does one wedding at a time.
Yeah. So it's always exclusive use
Hmm.
for each one, but we are doing them on the same day for sure.
You do right because you can do a two and a half
Yeah,
hour. You're not doing a
yeah.
6 hour and an 8 hour. You're just doing a two and a half and a
No, no, if we got one at Tui Hills for 8 hours, we'll do one at Abel for 2 hours as well.
right. That's what I'm saying. But you're not going to
Yeah.
do a six and
No,
an
no,
eight.
no, 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 no. There are some people who try that sort of thing, but it never works. Never
Yeah, we
works.
we my wife and I were talking the other day because we got married on a Sunday. We started at noon, and
Yeah.
we had to be out. I think it was 5 o'clock or so because there was another wedding coming in on a Sunday. There was another
Oh,
one that was
wow.
going to be another 6 hours, on top of that, going till midnight, and they were going to turn that room very fast and get another group in. But
Yeah.
I have some clients that will do Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday evening, Sunday morning, Sunday evening, throwing
Yeah.
five in on a weekend. You got to be careful you don't burn your staff out. But
Mm.
you're certainly making good use of the profitability on the busiest months there.
Well, what do they say? You got to sweat the asset.
Right. Well, again, looking back at the data, if everybody would look, I talk about your most important inventory is your calendar because it's
Yeah,
not going to
definitely.
change, right? So your busiest month, whatever it is, you're going to get 4 Saturdays, five if you're lucky. Once in a
Mm.
while we get lucky with five, but
Yeah,
pretty much it's
yeah.
four. And if you see that you're getting those inquiries, so are you are you turning away the smaller guest count weddings, or are you just increasing the minimum spend or minimum guest count for those busiest days?
So we do have different, we use minimum spend, not minimum guest numbers, which
Hmm.
minimum guest numbers is quite common here.
Yeah.
We don't like that as a way
Hmm.
of differentiating because we have a lot of extra services that people can pay for
Hmm.
and a lot of extra hire items. So we can always get someone with a smaller wedding up to a nice big budget.
Right. Yeah.
And they benefit, it makes it easier for them. They're getting all the things that they want in one package, which is
And it's
cool.
still exclusive use of the venue, which is what they want. And you're getting
Absolutely. Yeah.
right. It's just what, minimum spend is an industry phrase. It's not a common phrase for
No.
somebody who's shopping for something they've never shopped for before. They don't
Mm,
understand that. So I've seen it done different ways. One of my clients puts the prices on the website per person, but then says the minimum number of people. Now, of course, the same thing could happen if they came and said, okay, well, I don't have 160 people. I have 120. Great. Well, let's see how we can get you to there. Let's add the photo booth. Let's add these things
mm.
on. And you say,
Yeah,
okay, I'll
definitely.
do that wedding if they really want that. But as we all know, once that inventory is taken, it's taken. The next person comes along with 300 guests, and you can't
Mm,
take it. Although it did happen to somebody that I know in Mexico. They didn't tell them this, but I'm sure they just got a bigger wedding because they moved them to a different property. They were
right.
at this new property and they said, no, we can't do
Mm,
that anymore, but we can put you here. And I was
yeah.
like, oh, yeah, they got a bigger wedding. That's what it was.
Mm,
It's not right.
yeah.
You took that wedding. You shouldn't do that. But it sounded like that to me that they were just getting bumped,
Yeah.
for somebody better on that. So, um, what are some of the things you've learned now when things are a little bit leaner? Are you doing anything different in terms of following up or stuff like that because, things are a little still wonky with the economy and all?
I think that we've been following up for a long time.
Hmm.
Um, I think the last time that we had a little teaching session with you, which was really good, we sort of got to the point where we decided that what was most important was the system for selling, not who was doing the selling. I mean, you need
Right.
someone who's personable and all that, but following the system, doing the right things, knowing what to say, but having it as a system that really made a huge difference. So part of that system that we have is we do have a number of follow-ups.
Mhm.
And I was listening to a podcast from you a while back about how people sort of bail out from following up really early in the piece.
Yes.
So
Good for you, bad for them.
yeah, that's right. So we try not to do that. Um, in fact, we've actually got a little plan at the moment to go back to people who inquired even 2 years ago for
Hmm.
weddings, which we would have given up on. Eventually, you get ghosted, and
Sure.
you try so many times, and you try all the different ways, phone, text, email, the whole thing. And just going back to see, well, they wanted a wedding at the end of 2026. Did they get it? Did they go ahead? We
Hmm.
find, like just at the moment, we've seen quite a lot of inquiries from people who we'd given up on like a year ago, and we thought, oh, they're long gone. And
Hmm.
then they've been coming back to us because they postponed the whole thing for a
Right.
while.
Right.
So you've got a resource there, as long as you're recording your inquiries and making sure
Right.
everything's got to be written down somewhere that you
Right.
can get to them. So you could even go as far as maybe a year after, maybe longer. You just don't know. So look, there might be 100, 150 of those people on their books.
Hmm.
It's not that big a deal. And if we sell one or two weddings out of that, it'll be well worth it.
Right. Well, my favorite phrase, if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Yeah.
I worked with somebody the other day. He does weddings in Italy. So destination weddings for Brits and US and people coming over. And he's advertising here in the States. And he's responding right away, but he's about 1 out of 10 are getting back to him. Right. So he's getting ghosted a
Right.
lot. And I looked at how he was responding and, too long and the brochure didn't open well on a phone and all the typical things that we see.
Mm,
And so we came up with, I forget what it was, 7 or 8 different messages. So this is the system, right? You respond this way.
mm,
If they don't respond, you do this. If they don't respond, you do this and do this and do this. And about 3 days later, he messaged me and said, 6 of the last 9 that inquired, he's gotten conversations with now. 1 out of 10
mm,
before, now 6 out of 9. Why?
mm,
Meeting them where they are. Nice short message, just having a
mm,
conversation, not trying to dump everything on them all at once. Um, I posted this video on social the other day. Actually, reposted it from somebody that put it up there about Gen Z, and I'm trying really hard these days not to just say, Gen Z is this or Gen Y is this or Gen X is this, because we're really right now. If you just look at the age brackets, the youngest Gen Ys are 29. The oldest Gen Zs are 28. They're the same people, right? They don't forget the letter. They're the same people.
mm,
But what was interesting is it was a video saying that Gen Z has telephobia. Like they don't know how to use the phone. They're afraid of the phone because they didn't grow up having to use it like you and I did. And I was telling
mm,
this to a friend of mine who's got teenage daughters, and he said, "Yeah, he told his daughter, call. You want to find out, just call." And she goes, "Well, what do I do?" He's like, what do you mean? What do you do? You
mm,
pick up the phone and you call them. She didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to had a conversation. And they're actually Gen Z's taking courses, taking classes on how to use the telephone. And yet, what do we see? Almost half of the people that we do secret shopping, they're asking for a phone call right away. And they're wondering why they're getting ghosted. And here's one of the reasons: with people that just don't know how to use the phone and they don't want to use the phone. It's not their
mm,
communication method. So
mm.
we still, yeah, it's really hard to get my head around that somebody doesn't know how to use a phone because it just seems so natural. But
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's New Zealand's a sort of a smaller country. Um, Maybe that's just a different culture or whatever. We find the phone works pretty well even now.
Good, good.
And we do, generally speaking, ring first. The first thing
Okay.
but we don't send an automatic response.
Hmm.
Someone called Alan Bird told me that was not a good idea. So we don't do that. We'll ring them. If we don't get them, then we'll uh, email and text.
Right, right. So you're right
So
now. How often would you say that they're actually answering the phone? Because of course it's their availability. It's not just whether they want to talk
yeah,
on the phone.
yeah,
They don't know you're calling, right? It's not an appointment. So
yeah.
how often does somebody actually pick up?
I would say around about 50-50.
That's good. That's good. And
Yeah.
listen, I have no problem with calling. I certainly who
Mm,
did cold calling for 10 years,
yeah.
driving around knocking on doors. I have no
Mm,
problem calling somebody. You have to be prepared with a short message. And your
yeah.
message is going to be, that sorry I missed you. I was very excited to speak to you about having your wedding here. I'm going to
Mm,
send you an email right now. If you don't see it, check your spam folder, because they're crazy
yeah.
these days. And then texting. We know that over 90% of text messages are
Yeah.
seen within 3 minutes. That's not the case for, an email. They're not seeing that right
Yeah.
away, but they are seeing
Yeah.
that text. So texting has been working really well for a lot of people here. And if people who are thinking, hey, I don't want to use my personal cell number, you don't have to. There are texting services.
Mm,
If you text my phone number, my main phone number, it's a landline, the cord that doesn't
mm,
charge the phone. It's the one.
yes.
But you can text that, and I get it on my phone, my iPad, my desktop, my laptop. I get that everywhere.
Yeah.
And I did that because I used to have, here's my cell number, here's my office number. And one day somebody handed me a business card, and I was going to call them, and I'm looking at the two numbers, and it was cell number and office number, and I was trying to decide, is it okay to call their mobile? Because it's on the card, but I don't really know them that well. And instead of calling them, I'm sitting there looking at their card thinking, which number should I call? And I said, I don't want to do that to my customers. I want them to just
Mm,
see a phone number, call, text, whatever you want. So that's years ago. I turned that into a textable number just to make
mm,
it easy, reduce the friction. So in your follow up system, right? So you're going to call right away, you're going to email, you're going to text. How I love the fact that you're going back to people way more than just months ago, because I tell people just go back to people from months ago and just send them one sentence. Are you still looking for a
mm,
beautiful venue to
yeah.
host your
Yeah.
wedding? Are you
Mm,
still looking for a creative officiant to make your ceremony
mm,
beautiful? You're still looking for a videographer to capture the sights and sounds, whatever.
mm,
One sentence. Uh, I have, and just to clarify what Kevin was saying, an auto response, not an automated email, right? Because you can
yeah.
send an automated email. I do that. It's 30 minutes after you fill out my contact form. It's not immediate. And I did that, Kevin, because I'd be on stage and somebody would inquire and get an
Yeah.
immediate email from me, except I'm standing in front of them on stage. Clearly,
Yeah.
I didn't send that to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
30 minutes later, oh, Alan's in the hallway. He's messaging me. That it makes more
Yeah.
sense.
Mm,
But I have eight. I have a series of eight of those. And in this past week, two people from the sixth and seventh messages responded to me, right?
mm,
And I'm okay with a no. I'm okay with, hey, we've already booked or we don't need that
mm,
anymore because that's an answer, right? But how many
mm.
ghosts do you have from, like you said, from, a year ago, 2 years ago that
Yeah.
are you also following up with the people that came in, right? They had a tour, but then you didn't hear anything?
Yeah. Yeah. We do. Although we find that is much more difficult uh, because you've kind of answered all their questions already. I mean, we try and keep some things that we can follow them up with. So we'll
Yep.
send maybe so if they're interested in something and it wasn't available to see at the time, we'll send them a picture. Or if they wanted to see what
Right.
does this look like with a wedding in
Right.
it, then we'll
Right.
show them that
Right.
sort of thing.
Right.
The
But
other
how
thing,
how but how long? Because you said you're going back to people that a year ago inquired.
yeah,
What about people that inquired, came in, but then, they didn't tell you yes, they didn't tell you no. Are you still following
yeah,
up with them?
I think we're following up with them for about a month, sometimes more. It kind of depends on whether we think that this is worthwhile. There is one little secret weapon that we have,
Okay.
which is that we use a program called Better Proposals,
Okay.
and we team that up with HubSpot as our
Okay.
CRM. And we can see in the CRM when they've opened our proposals.
Right.
when they're looking at our proposals, when they're looking
Hmm.
at our emails. And so if someone, and this definitely happens, they send in an inquiry, we try and ring them, don't answer, fine. We text them, no reply. We've emailed them. Then we send them a proposal anyway, based on just a
Okay.
little bit of information that they've given us.
Okay.
And our proposals are interactive. You can change the number of guests, you can change what you're selecting,
That's great.
all of that sort of stuff. So they can work with it. But we see what they're doing from
Hmm.
our side as well. That's just,
Right.
how the internet works. Um, and so you might get someone who doesn't respond to anything. They never open the proposal. It's absolutely flat-lined. I
Right.
think those people, if they would be at the bottom of our list to follow up.
Right, right. But now, if they've never opened, the other thing is, did they get it? Like, did it
Yeah,
go to
yeah,
go to junk? Which you don't have much other than calling or texting at that point because you keep
yes.
emailing, it keeps going to junk. I had a consultation earlier today, and if you're listening, you know I'm talking about you with your Yahoo email address. He never got the Zoom link because Yahoo probably sent it off.
Mm,
I sent it again. He didn't get it again, and he said people give him crap for having a Yahoo address. I'm right, but he's also missing out on who
mm,
knows what because he's not getting those things. So,
mm.
if they've never opened after inquiring, you got to think maybe it is just going to junk. Maybe they're not seeing it.
Yeah, yeah, that's possible, but the text won't be going to junk. So we
No,
know they're going to
no,
get those. So
right, right,
yeah, I mean, at a certain point, there's only so much you can do. And you're
right.
better off.
Yeah, and it's like scoring them, right? You're scoring these are our better
Mm,
prospects, these over here. And
mm,
you know what? Sometimes if a five is the best one and a one is not, sometimes the threes, just like you said, they pop up and all of a sudden it's yeah, we were busy with fill in the blank, school,
mm,
or we saving
mm,
more
mm.
money, or it was
Yeah.
more than we thought it was going to be, so we saved. My son had gotten engaged in November of 2023, and they were looking to get married quickly in March. March became June, June became July, July became August, August became September. Nobody was following up with them, right? The people that they
Mm,
looked at in January for March, nobody was following up with them at that point. And, would they have used one of those people? Who knows? Who knows? But the fact is, they weren't asking anymore.
mm. Here, and I don't know what the numbers are in the States, it's quite common for someone to inquire at 10 wedding venues and get one or two replies of any sort from the wedding venues,
Yeah.
which I'm astounded by. And when I
Right.
hear these stories, I think, oh, that can't be right. But I just keep hearing them.
Yeah. That's worse than here if that's across the board because our secret
Mm,
shopping, we've secret shopped over 650 companies, right? Including
mm.
yours at some point, you know that.
Yeah,
Uh,
of course.
and we see about 16, 17% we get no response. I did have my assistant reshop that 17% just in
Mm,
case it was a technical issue, it was something, whatever. And a third of those we didn't get a second time. We didn't get anything. That's twice.
mm, mm,
I'm watching hundreds of thousands of dollars flying out the
mm,
door because they're not replying to an inquiry through their own website. It just blows my mind. But then
mm.
the other thing is that over 50% send the one response and then never follow up after that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is crazy. So the average number for 650 companies is two, and that's it. You're
Mm,
done, right? By the time
yeah.
you've done two, two-thirds of the companies are done. Three-quarters of them are done. Four, you're getting to 80% or more are done. That's why I have eight with mine, because by the time you get out there, you're in single digits. Nobody
Mm,
else is following up. And if you have a good system, and if you didn't hear this part before, Kevin's talking about the system. You can put other salespeople into that system once you have the system.
mm.
If you've ever read the book, The E Myth Revisited or The E Myth,
Yep.
right?
Yeah,
It's
I
about
have.
having a system because
Mm,
that system we can plug people in. I got a call yesterday from someone and he was talking about hiring a salesperson, but the people that he's been looking at have been coming from other venues. Uh, and they're a much higher price looking for a different type of clientele than the typical local venue. I said, well, don't look for a person who's got industry experience. Look for the right person. Teach them the product, right?
mm,
Have the system, teach them the product, but you need someone who can convert and close. right? I don't care what they were
Mm.
selling before. I mean, my number two rep at the Knot was selling mattresses when I hired her to sell advertising, right? But I hired a person.
Yeah.
And the reason I did that, Kevin, is, you look at resumes. I was hired to do things that my resume had nothing about. And that showed me when I was looking for a job, people were hiring me, not the resume. And what I realized is resumes are just a list of what you've been able to do because someone gave you a chance, but not
Mm.
what you're capable of because we don't know what you're capable of
Mm.
until we give you a chance. Right.
Yeah. I think we've in the end landed on a slightly different path, slightly,
Mhm. Yeah.
is that what we've done is found people inside our own organization who we think will be good at sales.
Right.
Then they already know everything in terms of the
Right.
how we deliver, what the products are, and all that. But
Mhm.
also, we know that when we give them the process, they're going to follow it.
Right.
And that's been
Right.
when hiring salespeople from outside, the biggest problem we've run into is that they won't follow the process.
Right. Right. And that this is why sometimes hiring from within your industry, they have the bad habits of wherever they came
Yes.
from.
Yeah.
Whereas hiring from outside, they have to learn your process because they don't know
Mm.
anything about it.
Yeah.
Having people on staff that helps you because you have your bench, so to speak, where we can call
Mm.
from. A lot of people don't have that advantage. They don't
Yeah.
have that.
Yeah.
COVID did a lot of damage to that with a lot of
Yeah.
places where you lost a
Yeah.
lot of that knowledge, those people
Yeah.
leaving there. So what do you predict for the future now? So this year, how's this year going to end up for you?
I think it's going to be a bit of a rerun of last year.
Okay.
It's they've just lowered mortgage interest rates, which is just huge here, and I'm
How
sure it
much are
is.
they? Yeah, about what?
I think they're about 5% at the moment.
Okay, that's lower than here.
Yeah, but before COVID, they were around about 2 to 3%.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
I
still a lot, but
refinanced. I
yeah.
refinanced twice during COVID, from
Mm.
4 to 2.785, and then from there to 2.5. So
Mm.
yeah, I'm keeping that one. Actually, I don't
Yeah,
want it. I don't. I'm torn because I don't want I don't want my mortgage. I want to pay it off, but it's at 2.5%. So why would I pay it off when I can earn more than that just
yeah.
leaving the money sitting if I wanted?
Yeah, yeah, that's totally right. So I think that's going to make a big difference
Yeah.
to one of the graphs I have on this big Looker Studio multi-page thing is I was trying to work out what it was in the market that told us whether things were bad or good.
Okay.
So I could track inquiries and I could track sales
Hmm.
because we already had that. So
Right.
I started putting in a graph for mortgage interest rates, um, uh, inflation.
Hmm.
But the one that turned out to be, and it's really uncanny, they just about match each other perfectly, is consumer confidence. So they do
Mm.
a consumer confidence survey every month.
Right.
When it went up, inquiries went up. When it went down, inquiries went down. It was not exactly in lockstep, but you could see the general pattern. If you got to do a rolling average, which is just a
Right.
statistical thing, but
Right.
you can see that happening. So it's just gone down a little. It was really good in January, and then it's gone down a little in February and March. But
Mhm.
once the lower interest rates come in, then people will have some more money, and will hopefully it'll all take off. 2026 is when they predict everything's going to be kind of back to normal. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting here in the States, every 4 years is a presidential election, and every 4 years things get a little
Mm,
bit wonky. And if we
yeah.
would, I love what you said there, because anything with analytics, you have to look at trending over time. You can't look at a snapshot of today.
Mm,
Like if you look at consumer confidence today, great. Okay. But what has it been? Is it going up? Is
mm,
it going down? And every 4 years, presidential election year makes things wonky. But the year after is a pretty typical wedding year, which means
mm,
people just waiting longer to book because of what? This crazy uncertainty, right? That the whole thing. One
mm,
side yelling how bad things are, one side saying no, things are good. Elect us, no,
mm,
elect us. There you go. And the people in the middle, like, I don't know, I'm just holding on to my money for now. But in
yeah.
all the years I've been doing this, I don't remember the year after ever being a bad year. with the exception of COVID, right? But I don't remember it being a bad year. So it means, yeah, they're just going to book later. They're going to book closer. And this is why the follow-up is just so much more important. It's always important, but it's more important when people are taking longer to book, because if you stop following up, but somebody else does, they're going to get the business because they're asking. Nobody else is asking. So
Yeah.
this has been great, Kevin. Thank you so much for sharing what's going on. We could do this forever.
Yep. Good.
I love the analytics. If you're not a left brain, and you're not going to go along with that, that's fine. I think the biggest lesson is come up with a system, stick to that system. You can plug other people into that system, that follow-up system, just like you do with planning an event, just like you do with executing an event, whatever your service is. Everybody's got their systems. Have a sales system to go along with it. That'll help you a lot. Plus, it's also something that's valuable. People talk about wanting to sell their business. Well, the system is part of what you have to sell.
Absolutely.
That's what it is. So thanks for joining me. I will put in the show notes if people want to find out more and see your beautiful venues. We'll have links to that over there. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us, and catch you next time.
All right. Very good.
Hi, it's Alan Berg. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Wedding Business Solutions podcast. If you have a suggestion for a future topic or a guest, please go to podcast.alanberg.com and you can make your suggestion there. You can also do it at Ask Me Anything, which is a button on that page, or just email me at alan@weddingbusinesssolutions.com. And if you'd like to find out how I can help you with sales training, website review, consulting, or speaking for your group or organization, possibly at no cost to the organization, contact me directly, alan@weddingbusinesssolutions.com. Thanks again for tuning in.